My guest today is Dan Dennis. A pleasure to meet you, Dan.
My pleasure.
We're very happy to be with you. Dan is is one of our chaplains here at Twin Lakes. We've got three of them. We've got Steve Copeland, we've got Tim Crowley, and we've got Dan Dennis. How did you wind up in third place here?
I wasn't the cleanup hitter for sure.
Okay, because you're part-time here. How much time do you put in here?
I put in about 10 hours a week now. I had put in more than that prior to COVID and some other things.
Because you are extremely busy. I cannot begin to imagine how busy you are. When people get to hear your resume a little bit later on, they're going to find out. They're going to find out you're truly busy. But let's start from the beginning. Where are you from?
Well, first of all, Nick, let me just say thank you very much for having me. I do bring greetings on behalf of Chaplain Steve and Chaplain Tim to your audience and to you, and I want to say thank you for that. I've heard rumors about you that you have this enthusiasm for life for many people, and now that I'm here, I know that it's true, and thank you for that. I want to say that where I'm from Cincinnati. I was raised as an Army brat, which through Georgia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then I ended up here in Cincinnati during the Korean War time, I guess you might say. But I grew up in Deer Park. I went through Deer Park and the elementary and the high school, and I ended up coming back to Deer Park years later as a teacher and a coach, and that's pretty much how I came here. I do want to say that as I tell you these stories, I stand in the shadows of all the stories of the wonderful people here at Twin Lakes.
They're incredible, truly amazing, and I'm intimidated by some of them even.
Well, thank you.
They have been amazing people.
Well,
Please go ahead.
Mark Twain said that everybody owes the world an autobiography because everybody is unique, and so therefore the stories here at Twin Lakes are incredible, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of who I am here today. I'm humbled in light of all those around me.
So tell me about your high school and college education.
Well, high school, I was one of those kids that grew up on the playground with all my other friends playing basketball, baseball, and football throughout the day, every day. And then I went through high school and played baseball, basketball, and football. And I enjoyed every moment. I have to say that in that growing up time that I'm not so sure I was the greatest student, although I think I was above average, but I never looked at my grades. I was afraid to look at them. But I did make it to college because of that. But in my baseball and football career, I was very successful, and I'm appreciative that kind of gave me a boost to the college level.
So where'd you go to college? You went to school?
Well, I went to Morehead State University. I had an opportunity to play several different colleges in football, including Annapolis when Lee Corso was there, and he was trying to recruit me, and I pitched in an all-star game this one summer in Washington, D.C., and after the game, he met me, and he took me on a wine and dine tour of Annapolis. And he kind of convinced me that Roger Staubach came from near where my grandmother and grandfather grew up in Silverton. And so therefore he said, he was an average quarterback. He said, I didn't think he was, but he's now in the Hall of Fame in the NFL. And he said, guess what? We'll put you there. And he took me out to the middle of the 50-yard line of the RFK Stadium. And he said, 50,000 people watched this game from RFK Stadium at that time. And nobody was there, and I was in goosebumps everywhere at the moment. So I thought about that, but I said, I don't know if I can handle that. I ended up taking baseball, thinking it was easier on my body. But I went to Morehead State University and graduated with some a degree in English as well as social work. And then I took a position in opportunity to turn professional in baseball, and I turned down the opportunity.
You went to something that pays a lot less money.
I went for the money. I went for ministry, and so I went into ministry following college, and I don't regret a moment. I do know that my whole life was to play professional baseball, and I had an opportunity, and even though the Cincinnati Reds, and that was one of the teams that was after me, and it was like a dream come true. But I decided that what was inside of me was somehow aspiring to a different kind of team, and that's why I chose ministry. And I grew up at Hartsville United Methodist Church in Blue Ash, and I have to say that that there's some role models there, Reverend
Marge Freshley was
Freshley. That family is so incredibly a role model for my image of what ministry is all about, and of course the chaplaincy as well.
Why did you become, now, there's so many things I want to ask. First of all, tell me about your family. You've got a wife, children?
Well, I have two of the most perfect, imperfect parents.
Oh, yeah?
They certainly weren't perfect, but they were perfect in my eyes, and they were most wonderful. They taught me so many things. I have three wonderful brothers. I was the third of four, and I always say three of them were wonderful. I'm not so sure about myself, but three of them were wonderful, and we grew up doing everything together, hiking, camping out, playing sports, everything, and had a great time with my brothers. I am married. I've been married twice, and I have two daughters and a son, all grown, and 5 grandchildren. My two daughters, one is named Sarah Ann and one is named Sarah Beth, and they're 4 months apart. Let you figure that out. But they all went to college and did well. One is an English teacher locally, and also coached high school, coached some women's basketball at Ohio State, coach now is volleyball in college herself as a head coach. I have a son that played in a regional rock band and then settled into real life and became a teacher. And I have another daughter in Nashville that took a leave of absence from her doctor of physical therapy to help with this homeless program that they've started in Nairobi, Kenya. She and her husband and several others have started this homeless center for kids in Nairobi, Kenya, and that's what they do now, fundraising toward that purpose. So, and the 5 grandchildren, they're all now freshmen and down, so they're still growing through, and I get to help spoil them and send them home.
That's the way to do it, man. You're about the same age as I am. I've been asked why I don't want to move here, and I happen to say I like it. But you're also downsizing. Why not downsize to Twin Lakes?
Downsize the Twin Lakes?
Downsize the Twin Lakes.
In terms of jobs, is that what you're saying?
Well, look at that.
Oh, you mean downsize, move in?
Living here, yeah.
Move into that. I've never explored that option yet. I have to speak to the family about that. We try to move closer to the 2 grandchildren because my wife babysits them. But that's a great suggestion. I will take that home today.
There you go. Find out. I don't know. Maybe you can't stand some of these people here.
Well, I will say this: the most incredible image I have of the kingdom of heaven is this Twin Lakes community. The staff, the residents is just wonderful, and the facility itself, and all those that take care of it, from food to the home services and everything. It's just a wonderful image of a kingdom in real life.
You know what's interesting to me about that is that there are a lot of people who move here not be for the religion or the kingdom or anything else. They're just moving here because they want a place to live and they heard that it's a nice place and everything. But as far as that's concerned, I mean, they could have moved to Kenwood Senior Star or any of the non-profit or any of the for-profit companies.
Absolutely.
But they're choosing Twin Lakes, and yet, in spite of this community, I would dare say that most people who live here do not attend a church service here.
Well, I can say they chose wisely to
Okay.
come here, first of all. And and that's a great question, that a lot of people do not attend worship services. I will say this, that I've always thought of a pastor, a priest, a rabbi, a chaplain, as what I consider, in Jesus' terms, Jesus was called the shepherd. And there's a flock out there, and I always considered us the sheepdogs of Jesus' ministry. We're the ones that kind of
Witty, aren't you?
we're the ones that keep the sheep together and bring them into the fold when necessary. And so I felt that, and that worshiping is a kind of a way in which Jesus had 3 simple words when they talked about why do we come together. And Jesus simply said, "Come and see. Come and see."
That's true. That's true. He did.
If you come and see, then decide whether or not coming more often or less often is important in that sense.
I think that the shepherd analogy is an interesting one for a number of reasons. Number one, some people would find that a little bit demeaning to them, that they are just sheep following blindly some kind of shepherd. And indeed, the word pastor in Latin means shepherd. And so these people who do not attend services here, what do you think of them? Do you damn them to hell, or do we just go on from here? What kind of a world is this?
Well, part of my ongoing ministry of developing an organization called At Hand Alliance, Jesus said these words, his first words in public out of the wilderness were, "Behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." By that he meant here on earth, here among us. And he even told us through John's gospel, "My spirit will be with you and in you." So therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be experienced and envisioned and involved in part we can participate in here on this earth by it being at hand. And so therefore, when I say to people who don't attend church, don't do anything, this is an opportunity to come and see the kingdom of heaven being participated in our midst. If you see that, you will want to respond to that. And if not, then hopefully the seeds are planted that somewhere at some point you will discover the kingdom in your hands somewhere.
Steve Copeland talked to me one time, and I posed a similar question to him. And his point of view was that we're all searching. We all are looking for things. And in that sense, it's something that none of us can escape. We're stuck with it. There's only one way to get out of life, and that's to pass on, and only one way to get out of Twin Lakes sometimes.
Well, that's wonderful. Life is a mystery, and we all are explorers. But I would reverse that. I would say it's not us looking and searching. God is looking for us. God created a world and was in it. And if you go back to the book of Genesis, God had this beautiful creation, but had no way to relate to that creation. So therefore, God created humanity. So that God now has a connection with God's own creation. And therefore, now we are part of that creation, made in what? The image of God. And therefore, we are the ones that are in this world. Now, we have kind of messied around with this world, but guess what? It's not necessarily even us looking for God. God is still looking for us. And in that sense, whether we're in a congregational worship or not, God is still coming for us.
My attitude toward religion has evolved over the years. I first thought he was an old guy with white beard and who happened to be Caucasian and everything else. And then I kind of put that aside, and I thought, that's not the way God is. But then I came up to a situation where I began to realize that this is not all there is. This life as we perceive it, and there's something else, and it's something inside of me that demands that kind of belief. If it weren't belief, it would be science. And somehow, belief and faith is what is key to it all. So that even those that do not attend church, or unchurched, or either agnostic or atheist even, are still stuck with the same problem. Science can't answer all of their issues. It tries, and you mentioned this beforehand, it tries to answer some of them, everything from the macro scale to
Micro scale.
Everything in between. Would you comment on the relationship of science to all this?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with everybody that I've read, but I can say that C.S. Lewis made a comment that I have a kind of affinity with, and that's that he said, "We are not a body that has a spirit. We are a spirit. We have a body." And that's why we can sit and see that we can tell that our bodies do age.
Right.
We can't control that. This is a physical world. It's in this physical world that you say that, well, we might be agnostic, might whatever, but if we begin to understand that dynamic, that we are spirit that has a body, that then those that may not believe anything, when they come and see, as Jesus asked, he just invites us, that's all. If he invites us to come and see, and we discover within us that there's a spirit within us, a spirit of goodness, of hope, a spirit of wonder, a spirit of joy. All the things that it talks about, the fruits of the Spirit, are in us. If we discover that, we will discover that our bodies, whether they are good to us or not so good to us, then we will discover the presence of the kingdom in our midst, of which, I hope you don't hear this as hyperbole, Twin Lakes is part of that vision that I see, that kingdom at hand.
That's interesting. Do you have your philosophy and your thinking behind this is what fascinates me more than anything. Do you have any goals for Twin Lakes, what you want to do here, what you'd like to accomplish here?
Well, I don't have any personal goals except to be a part of. I see it being a part of it to encourage and to motivate as the Spirit moves. In terms of myself, I would say I would love to see the things that we can always improve upon, through the individuals who live here and want that to be their kingdom at hand. Also the staff, for that matter. If we come together and understand those things, I would like to be a part of that process.
There are so many people here. We're up to 420, 450 people here. That's a lot of people in one place. Indeed, I'm told we're one of the largest in the Cincinnati area, if not the second or third largest. So it's quite an amazing community. But I think what rounds out the community, and I've said this before, is the fact that this is this is a sectarian. This is a Methodist ministry. This is a place where you won't get kicked out if you run out of money. This is not a for-profit group, although of course, like everybody else, with the balance of the budget, we get all that. But I think even if you never set foot across the threshold of the chapel, we have a chapel. You don't find that at Kenwood Senior Star or any of the other ones. And we also have a chaplain. In fact, we've got 3 chaplains. We've got a plethora of them. So there's, and even if they are never called upon, the chaplains are never called upon, either counseling or sympathy or anything else, they are there. So that even the most unchurched among us, even those the most agnostic or even atheistic of us, benefit from the fact that this is a sectarian institution. Would you comment, especially to those type of people?
Well, first of all, I would say that we live in a diverse world, diverse in every way possible. Male, female, Jew, Greek, Roman, Egyptian. We have all the different diversities of life, including religious beliefs and perspectives. And I feel like in terms of diversity, I try not to label people. I try not to put a thing on. So when I go into someone's room or meet someone in the hallway, I don't try to see them as Turk, Brahmin, Catholic, or Jew. I see them as a human being created in God's image. They may share a different, diverse belief system, but that all comes together in the oneness of our God. So however we search, the one God will find us.
It always impresses me because I think to myself, coming here to Twin Lakes, that there are so many opportunities for community. And I would encourage people, even if they never return to church service, to get out and participate with other people, because they find out that they're not alone in their issues about searching and trying to figure out the world.
Well, in terms of humanness, sometimes we do get caught up in the liturgy, whether it's the right liturgy, the wrong liturgy. Sometimes we get caught up in theological concepts and beliefs. Sometimes we get caught up in personalities. Some people have different types of personalities. Sometimes in how the word is presented, whether it's in music or by word itself. Some people don't always respond to that with the same enthusiasm or the same motivation. If we respond to God's call, come and see, with a sense of openness, even in the worst, in some of the dark ages kind of liturgies of the institutional church, people responded to faith. It is faith that brings us. And even in something that I know that I am certainly not one of the greatest speakers, but if someone can take one thing from anything I've said in a sermon, that is wonderful. And that's how the Spirit moves. Same way with anyone else that I may have said, they need to cut it off, or they've talked too long, or I didn't understand a word they said, or they sounded like they were just reading something. If I can bring something to my faith through anything someone said or sung, then I feel like the Spirit is moving amongst us. And that brings me to that sense of not just what the liturgy is about, but what we're about. It's the fellowship, and that's what the New Testament talks about. What really took off in the Roman Empire was the fellowship. They couldn't control it. It was the fellowship of the people together. Oh, how they loved each other so much that they were willing to die for one another. They're willing to die for the God that called them. And that's the point of Twin Lakes. This chapel is a central physical place. It's central to this, it's in the central campus. If you walk into this building, it's right down the hall, right, you see it when you turn the corner. It's right there, and the whole community is surrounding that chapel building. That's a symbol in itself of the oneness of God in us being the kingdom at hand. If one comes and sees the chapel, one will discover this kingdom at hand.
Your enthusiasm in your zeal, if I can use a religious word, well, is really impressive to me. It really is. What made you become a minister? Why did you choose the ministry over baseball or football or anything else for that matter?
Hopefully on the funny side, I said stupidity at first.
All right.
But ever since I was young, I do remember my father, who was in the Army, fought on the front lines of 2 wars, front lines in the Army, hand-to-hand combat. When he was home, every morning he would get me up and the brothers and would take us to church every morning. And he would never talk about the war, except he said that the war was evil and it should never happen. But he fought against it. He fought for freedom. He fought for peace. He taught me to fight for peace. He taught me to do that. And so ever since I was little, even on the playground, I kind of assisted those that were being bullied. I don't know why I did it. I just did it, but now I realize it. Father helped me. My mother was extremely encouraging and supported us in every kind of way with that in terms of the same kind of mentality. So ever since I was little, I felt like, and then when I got to high school, of course, a lot of other things came into play. Hey, you want to be a ball player? Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of thing. But then I talked to a pastor, one who's was among us here, and his wife and family are here. And one other pastor said, if you don't go out and see that you can make it in seminary or whatever, because I was afraid I wasn't smart enough. He says, if you don't go, you'll never know. So if you go and don't make it, then you'll know that God called you to do something else. And if you go and make it, then you'll make it. And right away in seminary, the one I went, they said, so go to this seminary because they're going to throw you out into the world. The world's so difficult and so challenging.
Even in the seminary, you were thrown out in the world. You worked
I was thrown out immediately.
You worked for Kmart then. You were a
I
security
was
officer.
a security officer. I was an occupational therapist at the Otterbein Home. I was thrown out as a young pastor in a 3-point charge where you preached 3 times every Sunday, and you had to ride the circuit. 14 miles was the circuit, so it was 28 miles every day. I had a youth group at the farthest church, which is where I had the most kids. So I took the kids from the other 2 churches to that one every Sunday evening. So that was 50-some miles a Sunday. And then I went to seminary 4 days a week. And then I was a student pastor. And when my supervisor came out and he saw a student pastor, he said, take that down, those people don't care. You're a pastor. So I took the word student off, and from then on I was a pastor. And I had to get a degree.
How did you get the job here at Twin Lakes?
How did
you get the job at Twin Lakes? You hear about it?
Well, I must say that it's a small world.
Okay.
I used to visit some people here from being a youth director and some other things, some family members, things. And then I also bumped into Marge Freshley.
Marge Freshley, her name comes up a lot, I know.
And then when an opening came, I just said, well, I'll apply, and I don't think I received the job the first time I applied, but then I applied again, and Jerry Muller was here. It's a small world. He taught at Deer Park when I was a student in junior high school.
Oh.
I didn't know that, and so that was a wonderful connection. And then when I was in high school, I realized that I had a life-threatening injury, a leg injury that put me in the hospital for 28 days, my senior year, and they didn't expect me to live. I had so many blood clots in my leg, I wasn't told that till later. When my mother, the doctor, said he's not going to make it to the hospital. They carried me by emergency from a football accident. Well, at the hospital, when I started going to therapy the last 7 days before I kind of walked out of the hospital on my own, I met Maurice Stokes, played with the old Cincinnati Royals.
Oh, yeah?
Well, he was in there with a quadriplegic problem, and he and I went to therapy together. And he used to encourage me, yelling at me, hey, Dennis, get your big baby, quit crying, start moving your leg, that kind of thing. Well, guess who came to visit him every day that they could? Bob Boozer, Roger Robertson, Jack Twyman, who paid all his bills. But guess who else came after he left Cincinnati? He came back every now and then, and guess who he came with to see me? He came to see Maurice. One of the people from Twin Lakes. Late
Charlie Wolf. Yeah, I know. I met him. He was Oscar Robertson's coach. He just recently passed.
Yes, and he and I had great conversations. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody owes the world an autobiography. Charlie told me so many wonderful stories, and when I told him, he doesn't remember me, but I said, I'll never forget you.
Charlie was an amazing guy. I wanted him to get on the show before he passed, but he was truly, truly amazing. And it's just one of the many examples here. Let me talk a little bit more about sports and get into this, because this just amazes the daylights out of me. Your interest in sports, first of all, but second of all, you've leveraged that interest into being an advocate for children and children in sports. You've been a coach, you've been a substitute teacher. Would you tell me about your youth experiences?
Well, I've coached every sport except, well, football, basketball, baseball, boys and girls, basketball, softball,
Right.
slow and fast pitch. I've been a coach at every level. I've been an assistant coach, a head coach in various different sports. I've coached in college. I coached with my one daughter, and I coached against my daughter. There's two head coaches that made the inquire, father-daughter, and that was a wonderful experience.
So who won?
Well, I had a good team, and she didn't have such a good team that year. And we beat them by 20 or 30 the first time. We went to their place, and I said, look, my daughter's a good coach. We can't overlook them. By the end of that second time at their place, we were down 6 points with 4 minutes left in the game, and I'd taken out every starter. I used up every timeout, and we ended up winning by 2. And so I couldn't believe it. But afterwards, the umpire asked me, said, what do you think? I said, my daughter outcoached me. I said, I knew she'd get.
She's that good.
She knew she knew what our weaknesses, and she knew her strengths, and she knew what her team could do, and that's what they did.
Tell me about some of the advocacy for youth.
Well, in the interest of that, part of what I ended up teaching was when I kind of took honorable location in the United Methodist System. I became a teacher, a volunteer chaplain for my teams, as well as the school with some of the principals, and I began to teach kids who were at risk. The ones that didn't want to be in school, got kicked out of school, had trouble, and I called them not at risk but at promise. Kids that were at promise just had troubles in life, and so I taught them. Some of those became athletes, and so I tried to encourage them and encourage the other kids in terms of if we work as a team, and whether on that field or whether we're not in sports, if we work together as a team in this classroom, things will work. And I learned from a gentleman in South Carolina. I took my kids on a preschool survival weekend. Nothing but us. We had to cook our own food, we had to take our own water, we had to clean up everything, and we explored the woods and things, and had a wonderful experience, and they survived, and then they got to be in my class. But these kids came together, and that helped me understand whether you're coaching a team, or you're coaching kids in a youth group, or kids in a school, or whatever you're doing. I worked with gangs down on the streets in Cincinnati when I was down there.
Tell me about that.
With the homeless as well as that if you see it as a team, and you get them to learn to work together and trust, then things will happen. So I've done it the rest of my life. I now work part-time for Easter Seals in Greater Cincinnati. It's called Easter Seals Redwood now, and I work with them part-time also in tutoring kids 18 to 24, either to get their GED, to do a work keys test, an ASVAB test from the military, or where they need to get a medical certification like a nurse's assistant kind of thing. I work with them with any test to get them moving forward.
I want to move to Nass Trinity. Nass Church is right on Washington Park, and you've done some work there as well. Can you explain that?
When I was appointed there, the district superintendent who makes appointments said, in Cincinnati, we have one spot, and nobody will take it. And I just moved from Springfield to Cincinnati and worked in a mental hospital for teenagers till I found another job at the moment. And he said, it's in over the Rhine. It's called Nass Trinity. And I said, I'll take it. I had no idea where I was going or what
It
I was
was a
doing.
soup kitchen then, wasn't it?
It wasn't even that. They were struggling in lots of ways. Just as a point of information, they were the first German Methodist church in the world.
Oh.
Wilhelm Nass sent missionaries back to Germany to take Methodism to Germany, which I thought was interesting. We celebrated our 150th anniversary while I was there, and what we devised with a gentleman who left the church in Wyoming Methodist Church to come down and help support this process. He and I developed what was called Urban Missionaries, a nonprofit. We felt like we didn't have the resources, but we certainly had people, and we're trying to get those people to like here, to come into the sanctuary and be inspired and to work together as a team and a community. Well, we started Urban Missionaries because out there are resources, both monetary, food, physical things, as well as people to help come. We started a meal, a dignified sit-down 3-course meal. People sat down, we trained our members how to talk with homeless people, how to work with them, how to be kind and generous and respectful. and we sat down with them to become community teammates. That was our concept. Sports really helped. And this gentleman and I, together, he's the one, I have to give him credit for the Urban Missionaries idea. But we developed that. We developed the resources, we developed this pinwheel concept on paper, and we developed the resources of volunteers to come down and help serve that meal with us, because we didn't have, getting burned out, being so tired from all of us doing this on a Sunday night. And when I left, we were serving over 800 people, I think, on a Sunday. And we had to do it in shifts. So we had people go upstairs and sang, we had people singing. And
You also work with Buddy Gray.
Buddy Gray, who was head of the Homeless Coalition. I worked with him with the coalition while I was down there, and I certainly supported that afterwards in terms of doing all I could to be helpful, to encourage people to understand that the Homeless Coalition, these are people.
It's kind of interesting because with the gentrification of Over the Rhine, it's changing. And I've noticed that while there are a number of ministries down there, I keep wondering, where are we still moving in the right direction?
You're asking a great question. The issue came along when I was there about gentrification. As a city goes, so goes the nation, according to many, many people who've done research on national stability and sustainability. I'm not opposed to gentrification. What I fought for, Buddy and I both believed, is that you can have all stratas of economic success down there, or lack of success. And so we tried to maintain that, okay, if you want to do that, then do this to help those that can't help themselves at that point. So we got some other churches involved, the Over the Rhine Council. We did some of that, okay? But that was the point of saying we can have that. When I was down there, it was a very dangerous world.
Indeed.
In terms of, there was almost two different communities, a day and a night. And I will say that I was cautious, but I was never afraid. And part of that comes from going to church.
I can still recall the very first trip I made to Music Hall. I was driving the big bus, and I dropped people off at the front, and I drove just one block further, and I found a place to park a bus. Try it sometime. And I remember after it was all over, some of the residents said, well, where did you park your bus? I said, right down the street. They said, there was a parking place there? I said, yes. Weren't you scared? I said, well, I guess I was a little bit, but it was changing at that time, even then.
Well, here's what I learned. We had a community center next door called Emmanuel Community Center.
Yes.
It was taken over by a private organization. The church probably, I would have cautioned against that, but they did that. I used to play basketball in there during the summer nights with the kids up in their gym, but they had a boxing ring, which I wouldn't do, but I would have never lost a fight, by the way, because I could run so fast.
Okay, all right.
Now I can't run at all, so I have to be thinking some way else not to fight, but they had a boxing ring. Well, I went outside one hot sunny night, summer night, and a bunch of junior high level kids were walking down the street, and I said, oh, okay, and I'm sweating and all of a sudden they surrounded me, and the one boy pulled out a knife. He was the wannabe gang leader, and I knew that kind of thing, and I know all that. And so, I don't know what led me to say it, but I said, oh, that's a neat knife. Let me see it, I think I have one like it. And you know, the boy handed me that knife, and all the other kids kind of stood around. Then we got to talking as a team. I looked like it was a huddle. That's the way I treated it. These images just kind of came, but anyway, that's what I did. And finally they got to talking. I said, come on up, this guy is a Golden Gloves guy, he's practicing right now. I'll introduce you. They were thrilled, they got autographs, and from then on, basketball, boxing, they were part of that center immediately, and it became something that I was thrilled to at least be a part of that. Well, when I was out on the street sometime in the evening, and some of those kids happened to see me, and somebody else might have been trying to bother me, those kids would come up and they became my protectors. Hey, you leave that guy alone, he likes us.
He likes us.
So it was that team sense.
How old were you at the time?
Oh golly, I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
Probably. I had to be in 30. I had to be in my 30s.
So where do you go from here?
Where do I go from?
Where do you go personally from here? What in your life?
In my life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm continuing to do what I'm doing. I really enjoy both Easter Seals work as a tutor, and I also enjoy being here being a chaplain, and the opportunity to be part of the worship service and to visit. Visiting is so critical. The dog, sheepdog idea.
Right.
I love to go around and corral people and just talk and sit with them playing cards or at the dinner or whatever. I love doing that kind of thing. By the way, dog spelled backwards.
Yeah, it's God. I've heard that.
I learned that from a kid.
That's an old song, but we'll let it stand.
But anyway, that's what I love doing both of these jobs. I wish I had more time at both places. If I were here longer, I'd probably visit everybody every day if I could.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's humanly possible. But I used to do that as a pastor in the congregational world. I felt it was so important to be out there visiting them, whether they were homebound or on a farm or whatever. I learned how to feed pigs, I learned how to slaughter cows, I learned how to bale hay, I learned all that good stuff out in the out, every which way. So I've learned a lot of wonderful things through the ministry in that sense. But here's where I am. I do have a nonprofit. It's on hold right now. It's called At Hand Alliance.
At Hand Alliance, okay.
Kingdom of Heaven is at hand. It's still on the books, but it's on hold right now. But we've developed a philosophy, we've developed a strategy, and of course, I'm still looking now again for new investors and a new fundraising process, which I haven't done yet because of my time commitment to my jobs right now.
So what does that Hand Alliance do?
Well, that's a great.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, our whole purpose is all about youth and keeping people young at heart. So whether and I don't call us senior citizens, I call us senior youth, and we work with people of all ages for that purpose. And so that's not my elevator speech, but that's just in a nutshell. But what we do is we provide programs for all levels of different kinds, try to be innovative, kind of like a YMCA, but different because I know what they do, I've researched them. But we also do things in terms of providing scholarships, providing different kinds of things, like things of a hand. We have 5 different, what I call main things that we try to do. You can, I can share that at some other point with you, but we do things to help in varieties of ways. We help people that have no hand, that kind of fundraising to help families that need assistance with artificial hands or that kind of thing.
I was noticing, and I looked online in your LinkedIn page, and there's something really interesting that you've quoted yourself as saying in there, and this is a direct quote from that. Speaking, this is Dan Dennis speaking. I have been a teacher, coach, minister, and a community leader for over 30 years. And my striving goal has always been to create a sustainable community. A group of individuals who want to come together, learn, grow, and give back. This is how, despite the isolation that exists in our world, we have a connection to others that keeps us young in spirit. Do you want to expand on that? Is that a pretty good statement?
Well, thank you. I hope that my goal is to maintain that same vision and perspective in everything that I do. That's what I want to do. And I'm just honored to be a part of this. I'm a part of sharing my Mark Twain.
I love it. It's fascinating. I wish more people could come on and do it. I truly do.
Well, I don't know if I've done justice, but I want to say that
you've done justice.
That it's beautiful to be a part of this whole community out here and the stories that they have to tell. And I'm just it's incredible to be a part of
So
that.
we had problems with the sound this morning, and I got a comment on my phone about that earlier, and I don't know what to say. I throw up my hands in desperation as to why things don't work right here. But we had a sound issue. We're recording this, and we'll be playing it back on YouTube. Of course, those of you who see it on YouTube already know that. But that will be coming back on YouTube. Let's see if there's something else I wanted to say. I really can't think of anything else in particular to say. Let me do this. Let me play for our audience here and at home the fact the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. The studio audience will be able to see the words as it appears on the screen. And I'm doing this in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Day, because we are here on that very day.
You know the irony of today.
Yeah.
My senior thesis at seminary was on the philosophy and theology of the Reverend
Martin
Luther King Jr. So I appreciate that opportunity to connect in that way. And I also want to say that the kingdom is at hand, if we can see it and envision it, and I'm working on the at hand.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. Some of you stick around for just a minute. I'm going to put this up on the screen. And those of you who are in the audience may enjoy hearing this one more time. This is Lift Every Voice and Sing with all the words. Yeah, applause.
Great job, great job.
So kind.
Jesus be born.